Okay, so we're still doing my FF7 playthrough, but in real time, I have finished that playthrough and I'm looking for my next game to play, and it's going to be Final Fantasy Tactics. So this episode is going to come out way before the rest. I'm going to wait for FF7 to finish before I get into this, but I wanted to figure out exactly how I was going to play it, and I like to play FFTactics in a very specific way. But first, I'd like to talk a little about the game in general. Um, I visited a cousin of mine in England sometime around the year 2000, and he was playing FF8, FF7, and Crash Bandicoot, I want to say 3. And all of them deeply inspired me, and I wanted to play these games. And specifically, FF8 appealed to me, so I played FF8, and I loved it. And then my parents got me FF7, and I played FF7, and I loved it, though at the time, not as much. And then later I got FF9, and then eventually we made the jump to PS2, and FF10 happened, and from then on it was all downhill. At some point after FF10, I went back to systems I'd never had. The first system I had was a PS1, and played, I believe, in the order would be something like FF6, FF1, FF4, and I did not complete FF2 or 5 until much later, as well as 3, which didn't come over to the US until much later. Um, and in my opinion, for a long time, kind of, and still, I think FF6 through 10 is the sweet spot of the series. I think after 10, the games aren't doing things I want them to be doing. Um, and I would also say are lower quality in general, but are specifically not doing things that appeal to me. And the earlier games tend to have less story. I think the most impressive of them is FF5, but it's never quite clicked with me. I think it's pretty ambitious gameplay wise in some similar ways to FFTactics that I should really love and never quite clicked. And I think the story is very humorously written, and that should have clicked well with me, and it never quite did. So I have a bunch of respect for FF5, but in general, FF6 is the earliest game in the series that really grabs me. I have a kind of low opinion of 4, which I know is a popular one. And so for me, the sweet spot of the series is 6 through 10 and Tactics. And for a long time, I would say my favorite games are FF8. Then I would go back and forth between 7 and 10 for second place. Third would be the other of those. Then FF9 in fourth, a very strong contender, but never in my top 3. And then FF6 would be fifth. And then FFTactics would come sixth. It's the best of the rest, right? And then I started playing it as an adult and messing around with the gameplay systems more. And I think it's just risen to my clear second favorite FF. At some point, 7 became my clear favorite, and Tactics moved into second. So I want to present Tactics, and part of the reason I've fallen in love with it so much, and so much more than I had, is because I came up with this drafting way of playing it that for me gives it kind of this endless, enjoyable replayability. And so we're going to look at a spreadsheet now, but we're going to look at the draft and the format of the draft. And the idea is you have 3 people, and each of them are going to draft 6 classes. And so at the end, you will have a team where you will have taken 6 classes. And from those 6 classes, you will make 3 units. And each unit can only have abilities from a pair of classes. So, for instance, if for some reason you drafted the first 6 classes listed here Squire, Knight, Archer, Monk, Thief, Geomancer, you could make one of your units a Squire and a Knight, another an Archer and a Monk, another a Thief and a Geomancer. And that would mean, I'm assuming people watching this have played the game. If you haven't, this will become clearer as we get into further episodes. But for now, I want to explain the draft for people who have played it. Um, it means that your Thief Geomancer would have to, at all times as you complete story missions, be one of the class Thief or Geomancer. And you have a loadout of 5 abilities, and all of them must come from those 2 classes. And you can mix and match however you want within that. But you're going to have these 3 dual class characters. You'll have your Squire Knight, your Archer Monk, and your Thief Geomancer. And this creates really, I think, interesting constraints on what you can do, which forces you into strategies that are interesting to figure out. And it's a format I really enjoy where you limit yourself in a way where you still have access to a whole bunch of power and you have to figure out how to play the game more precisely and better. And I really, it's a format that really works for me, and I hope it'll be interesting for you too. So what I want to do is I want to do a kind of mock draft and pick the three teams. And then I'm going to put this video out way before I put out any other videos. And you, dear viewer, can vote for which team you want me to play. Possibly play first, possibly just play. I'm not sure how much I'll want to be doing this, but I'll do at least one run. And I will pick a team and run with it. And so I'm going to do a draft here, and then if you watch this video, please let me know which team you'd like to see me run. I would really appreciate that. There is a scoring system, so teams can get comparative scores, and the better you play, the better your score is. The goal is to keep your number of resets low, so the number of times you lose a mission, you will lose missions during this playthrough, this is challenging, and to keep your level low. Obviously, you could power level forever, and then you'd have much lower chances to need to reset, but you have to balance keeping level low and keeping the number of resets low. In general, and I only count resets in story battles. Like if you get a random encounter and go, I didn't want that random encounter, and go back to your most recent save, I'm going to be dodging all random encounters basically. I think there are 2 points in the game where you, aside the very start of the game, there are 2 points in the game where you might choose to level up a little, to have a better chance of avoiding resets. But in general, to get a high score, you're basically just going to be rushing story missions and not doing random battles. Because you should be able to get through still with a pretty low number of resets, and raising your level will raise your score by more, and you're trying to get the lowest score possible. So let's do a draft and see where we come out. And I haven't like pre-planned this draft. I'm going to be figuring it out on the spot. Oh, there's a big question. So there are 3 teams and 6 picks per team. So that's 18 classes. And if you ignore Calculator and Mime, which I think are not interesting for this kind of playthrough, there are 18 classes. 18 normal classes that every normal character has access to in the game. So it fit well. But at some point I realized Engineer and Holy Knight are 2 classes you get access to fairly quickly. And you could have a placeholder character that has access to Squire that you then boot out when the characters that are an Engineer or a Holy Knight permanently join your team, and then you can add them to your team. And those are interesting classes to mess around with. And it also means, for instance, on the 18th pick, if there are only 18 classes, there is no choice left. And if we add these 2 classes in, there's a little more choice available. So I think I go back and forth on whether I include them. Some drafts I do, some drafts I don't. But I think for our purposes today, we will include them. I think they'll be more interesting to include. And I'm now going to talk out my drafts. If you are not interested in hearing me talk about the drafting process and what I think the values of the different classes are for our purposes, then feel free to skip to the end, see what the drafts are, and say which one you'd like to see me run. So the really generic way to start the draft, the first 3 picks, I've drafted with other people sometimes first myself, as I'm going to do here, usually with other people, is there tends to be a clear first 3 draft picks. And that is because if you look at these 20 classes, there are 3 classes that have access to reviving. And because of the system in FFTactics, where if a character is knocked out, they have 3 turns before you lose them forever if you don't revive them. And you must either end the fight or revive them by those 3 turns, or you have lost them forever, which is a reset. Though I've had crystallizations in the final battle where I still thought I was able to win the fight, and because the game doesn't continue after that, acceptable to have someone crystallize at that point. But in general, being able to revive is really, really useful. And each of the classes that can revive is useful for other things as well. So it is not, a major concession. We're not taking a class we're really unhappy to take. And the kind of universal number 1 class to pick in these drafts is Chemist. And you can see the draft order over here. You can see it's a snake draft where Team C gets 3rd pick, but they also get 4th pick to follow. Chemist is, I think, the clear best class in the game. If you've done any kind of All characters in your party must be one class challenges, which I think are less interesting and fun than the challenge I'm going to be doing. But if you've done any challenges like that, you'll know the chemist one is really straightforward to do. Their healing powers are just really good. Auto potion gets you through a lot of challenging sequences, like at Rio Veins. There's fights you can get stuck on here, and that's one of the fights that some parties will need to level up for that you won't be high enough level. And Chemist is just a solution to so many problems. It also has instant speed, non contingent reviving. The other revives have some chance to either miss or have a cost in MP, or can only happen if you are on a level height with the person you're trying to target. Chemist Phoenix Downs happen instantly, they do not miss. This is just a really powerful effect for this kind of thing. Chemists are by far the best healers. They get access to guns, but the other thing is most classes have better base stats. You're going to be able to combine your chemist with some other class, and that class will give you access to some damage, so your chemist will have damage output. It's not locked into kind of guns. You'll be dependent on your other class. Chemist is just really powerful, gives you so many tools. It almost every draft has been the first pick. I think one draft I went really off the beaten path and did not take a reviver with my first pick. I think I was really high on the power of wizards at that point, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. But basically, every draft that happens, Chemist should go number one. It's just too powerful to leave. Now, the other two classes that have revive are Priest. Priest can do so through MP cost. Priests do not have anywhere near infinite MP, especially if you want to be casting Holy, and especially because this run will be low level. You actually don't have that much MP to cast a lot of revives. And also, you probably won't have access to MP healing. Chemists can heal MP because they can use items, ethers that heal MP, but most teams will not have MP healing. Monks can heal MP, but you're never going to get both priest and monk in your draft, or very, very rarely. So you have quite limited MP. You could get move MP up, where every time you move you gain MP back if you get Oracle, but Oracle is fairly desirable. It's not clear you'll get that. And there's other things you're going to want. So relying on MP rather than Chemist, just relying on, you have 50 Phoenix Downs in your inventory, you'll have enough, is a much more limited way to revive, but it's pretty useful still. And priests have access to some other spells that are nice. They have re-raise. When your character goes down, they get an automatic revive. That's really nice to cast early on if you have time. They have access to Holy, which is a pretty high power spell. I think it's a little more powerful than Flare, but I forget which one is actually has slightly higher multiplier. But it's one of the top couple spells in the game for damage output. And priests also have quite nice speed. Weirdly, if you combine them with lancers, they're kind of a good carrier of equipped spear and can do jumping well because they have significantly higher speed than lancers usually do, and actually comparable attack power. And with the equips, they can in fact beat lancers for pure attack power. They'll have much lower HP, but they're actually a pretty neat class in a bunch of different directions. Of the mage classes, they're kind of the worst at magic, but the best at non-magic stuff, which leads to them having some interesting effects. I quite like Priest. And then we have Monk. Monk is the other reviving class. Now, Monk comes with a lot more consistent power than Priests. Monk punching is a really high power thing, especially. I didn't say something important. Uber Squire / Squire. If you draft Squire, that includes being able to put Ramza as a spot Squire, and Ramza is the best Squire. Ramza gets more moves than others get at Squire, and they are very much worth using. So usually if you draft Squire, you are specifically making that Ramza. Back to Monk. Monk damage is dependent on your Brave stat, and if you can manipulate Brave, there are two classes that can do so, Uber Squire and Mediator. Then you can really up your Monk's damage, but a 70 Brave character Monk will be doing quite high damage naturally without relying on equipment very much. Monks are quite high power. They have access to healing and chakra, and which includes MP healing, which is quite rare, and they have access to reviving, though you must be at the same height as your teammate, and it does not hit 100% of the time, even if you have really good Zodiac compatibility, which is not something we'll talk about too much here. There's a case for both Monk and Priest. In most drafts, they will go number 2 and 3. I think we're going to have them go number 2 and 3 here. I like using Monks more, but I find Priests a little more reliable. Monks take me into more damage output, while Priests will generally be a more defensive unit. I'm really actually not sure which is better here. Talking them out right now, it's sounding to me like Monk is, but I'm not sold on that. I think, if you already had a chemist, you would take a monk over a priest. But I think, and a priest has charge time on their spells, so they don't revive immediately, while a monk's moves are all instantaneous, which is an advantage to monk. But I do think priests have an advantage in kind of reliability and being able to set up stuff like re-raise before one of your members charges into danger is a really useful kind of preparing for potential danger down the road that is useful. So let's go priest at 2, monk at 3, which is sort of the average way these drafts go, but very arguable which should go where. And now we get our first team that can pick again. And now that all the healing is off the table, incidentally, this gets chaotic, right? If one of these two didn't pick a reviving character, then you could easily have a spot where someone gets monk and priest. Together, that's going to be fairly reliable, and someone is left with a team where they don't have any reviving. I did not feel like playing a team without any reviving this time around, so I made sure that each of the teams kind of picked the standard choice rather than go off the beaten path. Now, we now get some choices. What do you now want out of your team? Do you want to take the most powerful thing on the board? Do you want to take the thing that combines best with what you've already picked? Right? There's kind of two ways to go. Do you start thinking synergies, or do you still take raw power? If you're thinking synergies, then we should think about what can a monk do. A monk can heal MP, so classes like Wizard, Oracle, Time Mage, and Summoner that can run out of MP and have limited supply really like having a monk teammate, because the monk can get that. I do think you have less time to heal MP on your teammates than you'd think you would. With only 3 members, battles, it's easy to become relatively swamped. This also means characters that can take out enemy units very quickly should be considered at a premium, and characters that can take out multiple enemy units quickly are especially valuable. Another class that works really well with Monk is Ninja. Monk fists are really high damage output, and Ninja lets monks hit twice. And this just ends up being one of the higher damage things in the game. It is in a normal playthrough, and it especially is in a limited one like this. Monk Ninja is an incredible combination. If you leave Ninja on the table, then it has to survive 4 more picks before coming back to you, which is not, people like taking Ninja. Ninja and Samurai are often kind of considered the power classes here. And so there is some risk to not taking it immediately. I am lower on Ninja than most people are, so if I know I'm drafting against myself, I would probably not draft Ninja here, because I would suspect it will come back to me. But Ninja is a very good class. So I would strongly be considering Ninja here. I would also be considering Uber Squire. Uber Squire and Mediator are the only classes that can manipulate Brave, and Monk damage output gets insane if you can up your Brave to 97. Based on the way the multiplier works, you're just doing so much more damage the more you can up that. The difference between, it's basically just linear, right? A 70 Brave monk compared to a 50 Brave monk will basically do 70 damage for every 50 the 50 Brave monk does, and a 97 Brave monk, the max you can get, will do 97 damage to every 70 that the 70 Brave monk does. And this is just a massive boost. And so getting something like Uber Squire or Mediator is really useful if your team has a monk. but Mediator is usually available quite late, so I don't think you're in a rush there. Some people are really high on Lancers. Lancers tend to be a class that don't combine all that well with other classes. I think the best combinations are things like Thief, Archer, and Priest. And Thief and Archer are pretty low value, so you can get them late. So Lancer is like you grab Lancer, and once something you're going to get late will actually turn out to be useful, which is really pleasant. But it's not as good as you think it is. Um, because one of so what does Lancer do well? Lancer jumps, which makes Lancer invulnerable and can at range do pretty decent damage. But especially if you're kind of low level, that damage is not enough to one shot that often, and you really need to be taking things out. And the other thing is, it works against Lancer's bulkiness. Lancers have a ton of HP and are hard to kill, which sounds great. Then they're even harder to kill because they're spending so much time in the air. Sounds great. But all the time they spend on the air is time the enemy has to attack your other units, your lower HP units. You actually want your Lancer to be taking more hits, and the way Lancers play, they will take less hits. So Lancers are less good than you think they are, and in a three-man team instead, or three-person team instead of a five-person team, that effect is going to be exaggerated. The other two are likely to be substantially softer, easier to kill, and Lancer jumping all the time will only exaggerate their deficiencies. Uh, Samurai is incredibly powerful. If we draft Samurai here, I will talk about it. I'm not sure we will, though. I love Dancer. I think of the kind of power classes, Dancer is ridiculously underrated. I hope whichever of the drafts I do, I am possibly changing what people will pick here, but I think if you pick the team that has a Dancer on it, we will all have a great time. Dancers are super fun. Wizard is incredibly powerful and clearly the best class in the game for about 3 chapters. For the final chapter, Wizard's damage starts to relatively drop off, and suddenly it stops basically one-shotting entire teams. But till then, you can just be one-shotting bosses. Wizard is so good. Wizard doesn't even need to combine anything. With magic attack up, Wizard is just and proper equips, Wizard is going to do incredible work and carry you for a huge chunk of the game. And the one time I didn't pick Chemist with the number one pick, it's because I picked Wizard, because I was just really high on what Wizard can do. If you have never done a drafter challenge on FFTactics before and want to do one of these challenges, I would suggest picking a team with Wizard, right? If you look at my drafts and say, which one do I want to play? Pick the one with Wizard. You will have a much more comfortable time getting into the feel of the challenge because the Wizard can just very comfortably slaughter, for instance, all of Chapter 1. And that makes it easier to get into the game. Time Mage and Oracle are both very useful utility classes, but not that incredible on their own. Because they can do percentage damage, they can do really good work against some high power bosses at the end of the game that have a lot of life. But I would say you probably don't want to be picking them up this early. They don't have enough power on their own. Summoner is really powerful, but most things Summoner can do, Wizard can do cheaper and quicker because Wizard has access to magic attack up and Summoner does not. Half MP cost is great. Summoner is a good class, but Summoner should never be taken before Wizard. Summoner has access to Golem, and it has access to a damage percentage attack in Lich. So there is some case for it, maybe over Wizard, but I think in general Wizard's better. It's also, there are a couple fights where enemies can spawn with a Steel Heart, with a Thief move that confuses you. And if you have cast Golem, it is really hard to knock your teammates out of Confuse, and you can end up just slaughtering your own team. I've had a bunch of resets because I cast Golem in fights that I should have checked what abilities the enemy units had more carefully than I did. Mediator is only good if you need Brave Manipulation. Guns are just not high enough damage output. In the Alchemist challenge, you have 5 things with guns and they all just target things down from far away, and that works okay. But in something like this, where you only have 3 units and where you really need to be taking things down quickly to avoid getting swarmed, guns are very weak, and mediators are not a particularly useful class. Bard The healing is too small scale if you take them for healing. They don't really do much. Bard will almost certainly not be drafted in this draft. I basically never talk myself into Bard. Um, oh, we skipped Uber Squire, Knight, Archer, and Thief, and Geomancer because I was going to the more powerful ones. So let's do those quickly. Uber Squire is great. It gives you a clear way to beat Weegraph, basically the yell strategy, the yell and accumulate strategy. And so, if you are really worried about Weegraph, you want to draft Uber Squire early. It gives you Brave Manipulation, which is really nice if you have reaction abilities that you need to go off. Lots of classes do, so that's really useful. Uber Squire has excellent equips, so your Ramza will do great work. Uber Squire is really good. Very good pick. Knight, generally just not enough power. Knights have a similar problem to Lancers, where all their equips help their HP and make them bulky boys, but they don't make them powerful. And you're just not going to output enough damage with Knights. So, you can pick up Knights later and it won't be like a bad member of your team, but Knight is very low priority. Archer is even lower. Um, Concentrate means you dodge certain types of evasion, which can be really good on ninjas because reliably getting the 2 hits of ninjas and just never missing on them is wonderful. So Ninja Archer is a common and pretty good combination, but most of the time archers are not doing much. It's a pretty unappealing class. Thief is really low power, kind of poor stats. Weirdly combines well with Lancer because they have access to equips that can up your attack, which Lancer does not have access to while having high speed. Speed affects how much time they spend in the air. Quicker speed makes their jumps go quicker. Uh, Thief Lancer is quite a nice combination, actually. Steel Heart is a sneaky move to make enemy units come to your side. It is generally going to be far too risky of resets to try to actually steal items from valuable targets, so you won't be doing that. So Thief is basically kind of interesting stats, high speed, interesting equip options, and access to Steel Heart. And move plus 2 is good. Move plus 2 is good. So, you pick up Thief at the end of the draft, you combine it with some other class, you're okay with that, but you're not taking it early. Geomancer, again, it has attack up, which helps a lot, and can be combined well. If you get a monk and grab a Geomancer late, you're pretty happy to add attack up to your monk. But in general, it's just not high power enough. It's kind of a really good carrier class for any ability set. It's basically got the best overall stats of the physical classes. And actually, it has decent magic stats too. So if you have a magic class and you're not bulky enough, you could use Geomancer and survive there. But this is with these early picks, we should be looking for higher power than this. Our last 2 classes left are Engineer and Holy Knight. Engineer can really slow enemy units. I haven't played a lot with Engineer in these challenges, and slowing enemies 1 unit at a time is not as powerful as some other classes give you, but you can definitely see some use to Engineer, right? Engineer, aim arm and aim leg, and occasionally seal evil can take out or slow enemy units enough at range that it can clearly do a useful thing. On the other hand, you're committing to a gun user that's basically committing to a unit that is going to have no damage output or very little damage output. We won't be able to farm the better guns that give real damage output. We almost certainly won't be able to steal them. And so we should assume really low damage output here. And yeah, that's a pretty big cost. Holy Knight, I quite like. Instant speed, no MP cost, fairly powerful moves, but on a class that cannot equip much. So what you do with Holy Knight is you try to find a carrier class, like Geomancer or something like that, which can equip physical attack upping options. And that way, Holy Knight has just really good damage output, solid speed. If you get a Holy Knight Geo, you're really happy as soon as you get access to the Holy Knight. This is going to be a really nice class. And then in the end game, you get an Excalibur, and the Holy Knight can equip that, and you switch back to Holy Knight as your main class and equip the Excalibur, and your damage is lower, but you get permanent haste, and you just get so many turns, and it's delightful. So Holy Knight is very good. I don't think it's good enough to be picked this early, but I think it is very good. So in general, the classes I think we should be thinking about right now are Uber Squire, Samurai, Ninja, Dancer, Wizard, maybe Summoner and Holy Knight, but probably those four. And probably actually it should just be Samurai versus Wizard. I think Samurai and Wizard are the best of these classes. Wizard is just so incredibly powerful through three and a half chapters, and Samurai, once you get access to Samurai moves, is super duper broken and clearly the like dominant mid to end game force. The best pick here is probably just Samurai. I kind of want to pick Ninja here though because I think the Monk Ninja combo is really fun, and I think that would make an enjoyable draft. Like if you're picking for pure power here, you pick Samurai or Wizard. I think anything else is just wrong. But Monk and Ninja are a sick combo, and if we can grab something like Uber Squire later, which is probably still available come the next pick, I think it will be, then you're going to have Brave Manipulation. You're going to have an incredible Monk Ninja unit. Manja, we'll probably name it. Or Nink? No, it's going to be Manja. So yeah, let's go Ninja today. Let's try to draft for synergy, even if this is not quite how I would normally draft, because my current opinion is if Samurai is available after the first three picks, you take Samurai, and Chemist is number one, but I think there's a case for Samurai and Wizard above Priest and Monk. At this point, we should probably take Samurai. Samurai is just so good. Basically, it has area of effect. You hit squares around you, it cannot hit allies, and it hits for kind of insane damage. Now, Samurai's moves are dependent on magic attack, and Samurai has low magic attack, so you need to pick up another mage class. Time Mage and Oracle are both great here. Time Mage is a little better, but Oracle is really good too. Summoner, which is normally very good, is probably the least desirable of these because it has the slowest speed. Priest is very good because it has the highest speed. We could combine those already. Wizard is just unbelievable because it has magic attack up. Wizard is probably even better than Time Mage, but you almost never get Wizard, and we're definitely not getting Wizard here. Wizard will go. Magic attack, basically, Wizard just does so much more damage than you think if you haven't messed much with Wizards or you moved off them quickly because they're an early class in the game. But Wizards, there's a glitch called the JP Scroll glitch that basically means you can learn all their moves immediately, which is quite helpful. Magic attack up is a permanent, basically. FFT math works a little differently than you expect, but around a 33% boost. You also regularly get elemental attack up that gives another boost on top of that, and you just get absurdly high magic attack stats and access to all the spells early, and you can just wipe stuff. And because you can use the higher level spells, you can wipe whole maps really quickly. And it's just Wizard's incredible. The start of this draft will look much better for the Chemist Wizard team than it will look for either of the other teams. Both the other teams will look much clunkier and weaker. This team, you should be able to complete the first two chapters without a reset. Like, if you have much at all experience with this, it should be no danger to you. Chemist is so reliable, and Wizard is so powerful. All right, we've gone Chemist Wizard. What do we want next? Well, my instinct here is we probably want some late game power. Chemist is reliable throughout, and Wizard is incredibly strong early game and mid game, early mid. And so we should be prioritizing things that are good late game. So Holy Knight is quite appealing here. Summoner kind of has a similar arc to Wizard, of it destroys the early game and drops off a bit late game. You could argue it drops off less so because it has access to Lich for final boss stuff, but Lich's accuracy is not super reliable. Chemist Wizard, by the way, means we already have Weegraph super well covered. Those two classes just beat Weegraph. Like, we could make Rams a chemist wizard, and his magic will destroy Weegraph, and auto potion will mean Weegraph can't destroy him. I'm kind of tempted to go Holy Knight here. I don't think of that as the best class on the board. I think Dancer is the best class on the board. But I think given we have Wizard. So why is Dancer so good? Dancer has Nameless Dance, and Nameless Dance does random status effects to the enemy. And if you start far away, that means there will be multiple turns where Dancer could just kind of paralyze their whole team, could get a whole set of debilitating effects on them that, and sometimes it'll just completely miss and do nothing. But if there are an average 6-7 enemies per battle, and if they take a couple turns to reach you, you kind of have 14 attempts to have done status effects. About half the time it hits with at least one status effect. Maybe half that it hits with a debilitating status effect. So 25% of 14 is, 3 to 4 of their units have a debilitating status effect by the time they've reached you. That's incredible. So Dancer's really powerful, but Dancer will not beat the endgame bosses for you. It has some interesting tools. It also has slow dance, and you can in fact slow the first phase of the final boss, and that carries over to the second phase. So if you can get enough slow dances off, you can walk the final boss. Again, that is about 50% chance of hitting each time it goes off, but it's a pretty incredible effect. Dancers are great. I think we're going to go Holy Knight here. I think Holy Knight makes sense as a fit. You generally want one Excalibur class on each team at least. So Uber Squire, Knight, and Holy Knight are the 3 classes with access to Excalibur, and this seems the right pickup to me for this team. So Holy Knight off the board. Okay, we have Priest and Samurai. Now, Samurai wants a mage class. Samurai also likes having Brave Manipulation. So I think some of this pick is, do you think Time Mage and Oracle will get back to you? Or we could go pure power. Dancer is the best thing on the board. You could reasonably have picked Dancer like 4th or 5th. Dancer's incredible. Like Wizard, Samurai, and I think Dancer are the big 3. Team C went Ninja, and that was probably a bad pick. Dancer is an enormously powerful class. I've been talking about you need things that can debilitate enemy units quickly, make them non-threats. Dancer is the absolute best of this. Dancer's unbelievably good. Dancer's probably the best pick. Now, if you want to maximize Samurai, you take Time Mage here. Time Mage is the best combo with Samurai once Wizard is off the board. And you're never going to get Samurai and Wizard unless you take them with these 2 picks. Which is a very interesting way to play. You skip the Reviver, you're not going to get a Reviver, but you've guaranteed yourself Samurai and Wizard, which is the best combo in the game. So, how to go? We have a choice. I'm tempted. So Uber Squire is good here because Samurai can basically stop being hit by any normal attacks if you up its Brave. So that's a really nice effect. Uber Squire is a nice pick here. Uber Squire also says, I'm not going to have... It gives us a good answer to Weegraph, which is a big problem in the game. So Uber Squire has some real appeal here. Dancer has some real appeal, and Time Mage does. I think any pick other than those 3 would be pretty poor here. Now, there's a good chance we get Time Mage when it comes around to us. If we leave Dancer on the board, then Dancer has to be taken by Team C. Now, the first time I ever did this, drafted against people, we all thought Dancer sucked, and I got like Dancer here, one of these picks, and I just had an unbelievable team. I had a Wizard, Samurai, I had a Reviver, and I got Dancer at the end, and that's the best team I will ever draft, because I will never have a draft again where people don't know that Dancer is good. And even if they do know, and even if they don't know Dancer is good, I will take it earlier on the off chance I won't get it later, because it's just not worth risking it. If you can take Dancer at like the 12 pick, you should take Dancer at the 12 pick, even though maybe there's a chance it gets back to you or whatever. Okay. I think I'm between Dancer and Time Mage. Sorry if this is real boring, but Dancer's better. The Time Mage is so good with Samurai. But there's no way I won't get one of Time Mage or Oracle. Oracle's not as good as Time Mage. There's a clear drop off. I think I'm probably going to get. Like, the next one probably has to take Uber Squire and Summoner. So I can probably get Dancer and Time Mage here. I can probably get both. And that just seems like Team B is going to be the best team. Yeah, yeah. That seems like Team B is the best team. Yeah, let's take Dancer. Middle row gone. All right, here I think Monk Ninja is great throughout the game, but Summoner lets this team absolutely sweep the early chapters. And the thing about Summoner and Wizard is not only do you sweep the early chapters, but you sweep it low level. You can stay a really low level and get a really good score. Why is that? Because Summoner kills all the enemy units in one move. And if it takes like multiple moves to kill them all, then you get experience for all those attacks, because FFTactics is a game where you get experience basically from every attack, and you get a bonus to experience if it was a killing blow. Now, you don't get a bonus for like 6 killing blows, you can only get one at a time. So the Summoner or the Wizard, but especially the Summoner, which is bigger area of effect attacks, will get the most advantage out of that. And Summoner is just great early and quite good late. I like Golem a lot, even though I did mention it can be used harmfully. I think Summoner is kind of too powerful to leave on the board, especially for a class that so far has no area of effect. And I think it's got to be Uber Squire. That gives this team really good coverage of Weegraph. Uber Squire has very good tools on a fight that can easily be a problem, and it means your Monk Ninja is going to have very high Brave, which is going to mean their damage output is phenomenal. Yeah, I think Uber Squire has to be the pick, and that means, and I wasn't manipulating this, I don't think Team C should pick Time Mage, but that means Time Mage comes back here, and Time Mage is just a great combo with Samurai. Samurai has low magic attack. You need to have a high magic attack carrier. Priest can work, but I think here Time Mage is enough better. It's worth getting Time Mage. Time Mage has better magic attack. It has access to some percentage skills and some haste stuff that's just useful to be able to throw out early in a fight. And most importantly of all, it has teleport, and teleport gives you greater movement control, which can let your area of effect moves, which Samurai, it hits the area around the Samurai. You can make sure to place the Samurai well enough that it hits all the key targets. So, yeah, it is just a great combination. It's not quite as good as Wizard, because Wizard's damage output is so absurd, but its damage output's still going to be really high, and it has access to teleport. All right, we return to Team A. What does Team A want? They get a double pick here, and they're going to have limited choices on their last pick. Now, right now, if you're building Team A, I think you have Chemist and Wizard on Ramza. Chemist and Wizard on Ramza gives you a pretty easy Weegraph, and it's just a great unit. Ramza is most male characters have higher physical attack, female characters have higher magic. Ramza is high on both, so you can send him either direction happily, and Chemist Wizard's really strong. Holy Knight will need a combo. Geomancer is probably the best combo for Holy Knight. Late in the game, you will have Holy Knight as your main class, and you don't need much support. But early in the game, Geomancer is nice as your carrier class, and it gives you attack up, which is really nice. and it can equip swords, and you need to be able to equip swords. Ninja is a good combo, but Ninja's not on the table. Knight doesn't give you access to better equipment than Holy Knight, so it doesn't really help you. So Geomancer is the pick if we want to pair with Holy Knight. And I think that should probably be one of our picks. So we'll take that first. Geomancer. And we will remove Geomancer from here. And now we have our 13th pick. And we're gonna have some selection, but not much on our 18th. So this is the point where Lancer suddenly really jumps out to me. Because right now, like Holy Knight and Geo, that's going to be one of our pairs. Chemist and Wizard, that's going to be one of our pairs. We need a third unit, and how do we construct a third unit out of the remaining classes, which are generally lower power? I think a lot of people Lancer will jump out at. I think some people Oracle will jump out at. I think Oracle is a really neat class that can debilitate opponents, but basically does so too slowly, and it's really easy to get swarmed there. Mediator is maybe in a similar position to Oracle, where its debilitation doesn't hit quite reliably enough. Is this a team that really wants Mediator? Do we need High Brave? Holy Knight doesn't need Brave, it needs Attack. Chemist can use Brave. Mediator would be nice on Chemist, because you want Auto Potion going off regularly. That makes Sweetgraph a lot safer. But it doesn't seem that exciting. I think you just need Lancer here. We need a third member of the party, and Lancer is one of those classes. You get a Lancer, you will get something that combines well with it, like Archer and Thief are always available late. If you get Mediator here, you're really happy. Your Lancer Mediator will be worse than a Lancer Thief or a Lancer Knight, but it lets you up your Brave on your Chemist, and that's really pleasant. So you got to take Lancer here, I think. Most of the good classes are like good in combos, right? You get Samurai in any mage class, that's incredible, right? You get Monk and Ninja, that's fantastic. Lancer is one of those classes that like mostly doesn't need that much help, but also can't get that much help. There's not something that really changes what it does. And so if you're like, well, I have two good party members and I need a third, and Lancer's on the table and the choices aren't great, you take Lancer. Okay, what's this team look like? Priest, Samurai, Dancer, Time Mage. Well, I think this is going to end up being the Mage team, right? This is going to end up being a hardcore Magic team. Because Samurai is going with Time Mage. Dancer, much like Lancer, Lancer, doesn't really need help. There's a few things that give it a slight plus, but it's not a big deal. Ooh, actually, no, there is a real choice here. But Dancer does not need significant help. It will basically dance in a corner and destroy the enemy team. And it just doesn't need help to do so. It can do so just fine on its own. Samurai Time Mage is a phenomenal party member. It's probably going to be the best member of any team. Samurai's that good. Priest would appreciate move MP up from Oracle. Something that lets it recover some MP would be pleasant. It doesn't need anything from Knight, Archer, or Thief. It doesn't need anything from Bard or Engineer. But this team could use Mediator. Mediator can up Samurai's Brave, and then Samurai can just run into the middle of the enemy and use Blade Grasp, and they'll waste all their attacks on the Samurai. So Mediator probably has higher upside, but I'm already confident the Samurai Time Mage is going to be incredible, so I'm tempted to take Oracle to make the Priest better and have just more tools. Move MP up is just a really nice thing on the Priest, and our Samurai is already pretty great. We're not going to have access to other MP healing. Yeah, I want Oracle. It is funny how when your teams start going physical or magical, they often end up, sort of sticking with that direction, where this team now has 3 different pure mage classes and the other teams have 1 each. of the 5 mage classes, it now has 3 of 5. All right, Team C. What are we trying to do? We have a monk ninja, we have a summoner, and we have an uber squire. Summoner and uber squire are probably going to be separate, though uber squire has good enough magic and Ramza has good enough base magic that summoner uber squire could be a combo. But if we can see a way to help out with uber squire or with summoner, we should take that combination. We don't need mediator. We could take it just to screw over my other drafts, but I'm probably not going to screw myself here. Uber Squire can wield the Excalibur, so you don't need Knight as an Excalibur user. What else is there? There's not much left for this team. Engineer Summoner? No. So you could go Ninja Uber Squire and combine the Monk elsewhere. Maybe Monk Thief? You get the move +2? That's pretty nice. You could also make Ninja Archer to get Ninja Concentrate and have Monk Uber Squire, which is pretty good as well. So I think Archer and Thief give you the most tools. Summoner is another standalone class, like Lancer and Dancer. Summoner is one of those things. It doesn't need much help. It doesn't get much help. It's very good, but it stands on its own. It's not. You pick Summoner, you're getting, your 8 out of 10, right? You've gotten an 8 out of 10 on your team. Whatever class you get with it, it's still an 8 out of 10, and it's never more than an 8 out of 10. It's probably Thief or Archer. I tend to prefer move +2 to concentrate. I think move +2 is whatever it combines with that's gonna take the move slot, right? You look at these other units. Monk has move HP up, and Uber Squire has move +1, but move +2 is basically going to be an upgrade wherever you put it. Yeah, let's take Thief here. And occasionally you might use Steelheart. And for our final pick to fill out our team, what are we going to pair with Summoner? I don't know. Engineer doesn't really add anything to Summoner. Summoner at this point will be our base class. If any of these are a base class, we'll have 2 low magic attack. Archer doesn't give anything to Summoner. Knight gives like equip armor. It could have higher armor. I mean higher HP. I don't think that's meaningful. Could pick Mediator to screw over the other teams. Which I'm actually kind of tempted to do. I wasn't really intending to, but I'm not sure what else makes sense here. And Mediator gives access to a sleep move, Mimic Darivon. That's kind of useful. Probably the right pick is Mediator here. This team is already the team that has Brave Manipulation. I'm not like trying to screw or help my other teams. This would clearly screw them. But I think it is just the correct pick. Let's make sure. It's unclear how we're going to do Monk, Ninja, Uber Squire, right? What pair are we going to do? If we do like Uber Squire Ninja, we could get access to like dual wielding and the Excalibur kind of thing. The Excalibur and another Night Sword, that's pretty great. But Monk and Ninja are great, and Monk and Uber Squire is also quite good. Probably the least good of the 3. So, unclear which way I'll pair Ninja. Thief gets paired with the other one. Does Summoner want move +2? Like, it doesn't hurt, but it's not. But that means one of Monk or Uber Squire could be left over. Could that get a really good pair here? No, this should be Mediator. I'd love to leave Mediator for the other teams because they would just be better and more enjoyable to play. But I think Mediator has to be the correct pick here. Engineer? Could you go Engineer? What would be the upside of Engineer? You can't pair Engineer with Uber Squire because they're both unique characters. So you'd have to go either Engineer Summoner, which does nothing, or Engineer Monk. which does nothing. It's not engineer. It's not bard. Bard's garbage. I'm not going to pick bard. So knight or archer. Can I convince myself into knight and archer to help myself out? Concentrate ninja. So if we go concentrate ninja, monk, uber squire, thief summoner. Concentrate ninja is pretty good. Monk uber squire is very good. Thief summoner is worse than mediator summoner. I think this is the right pick, but I'd love to leave mediator to my other teams. So you know what? I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna be nice to myself, make all the teams appealing to me. Not that the other teams are doing badly and need mediator. No, you know what? We'll play it honest. We'll play it honest. Mediator off the board. Sorry to future me. Okay, the next team. What do we need? Our lineup right now is Samurai Time Mage, probably Priest Oracle, and Dancer doesn't really care about their teammate. Dancer must be female, so can't combine with Engineer, can't combine with Bard, so the pick must be Knight or Archer. Do either of these make any difference at all? Knight gives higher HP, so the Dancer lives longer, but I think Archer is the better pick. Archer gives access to some equips that might be able to like up speed more than Knight can, and speed is somewhat useful here. So let's go Archer, which is a shame because the next party would have liked Archer coming over. Oh, there is a case for Knight, actually. No, there is a real case for Knight. I think it should be Knight, because Knight, I don't have a use for the Excalibur yet in this party. Yeah, let's go Knight. Let's say, okay, you gave me an Excalibur wielder. If I can make my, yeah, because Dancer can, there are some fights where Dancer's just not that relevant, like when there's a single target, Dancer doesn't have much to do. And if the Dancer is also an Excalibur wielding Knight, that has something to do in all fights. So yeah, let's grab Knight there. And then here, kind of surprised I didn't take Engineer at any point. I think Engineer is a little better than these other classes are, but it didn't make any sense with the parties. Does it make sense here? So we have a Holy Knight Geomancer, we have a Chemist Wizard, and we have a Lancer. Archer is one of the best combos for Lancer, because Archers suck, but they have really good equip options. So if you put Equip Spear on an Archer and have them as your jump unit, it is a faster, higher power unit than Lancer. So genuine upgrade on Lancer. It's lower HP, but given that you're jumping a bunch, like your survivabilities, your Lancer is never the unit in your party that's like dying all the time, or very rarely. Lancer Archer is a standard combo for Lancer and quite good. Engineer Lancer is weird. Yeah, I mean, you just have to waste one of the skill sets. It's not worth doing. I think the Lancer skill set is better than the Engineer skill set. So we'll go Archer, and Bard and Engineer are left on the board. I think Bard should basically never be picked. It's also a pain to grind to at the start of a game. Because at the start of the game, before you do Dorter, like basically all FFTactics challenge runs start at Dorter. Before you do Dorter, you have to grind the two classes for each character, and Bard's a pain to grind to. So is Dancer, so are a bunch of these others, but Bard's a pain, and there's like no payoff for it because Bard is bad. Engineer, I think, is a completely reasonable class, and it would have been fun if it landed somewhere. There's a case for picking it here because it combines decently with Chemist, right? It just gives Chemist new offensive options. But I think we're just going Wizard Chemist anyway. Like, Lancer Wizard is a much bigger waste. And Wizard Chemist is great. Like, the Wizard just slaughters, and if you ever need to heal, you heal. Right, you're doing great. So I think Engineer didn't find a slot, but if you, like, would have picked Engineer somewhere here, you know, somewhere in this range, that's reasonable. Yeah. Incidentally, if you think I drafted this terribly and I underrated some classes, please draft with me because then I'll get really good drafts and have fun running them. I'm sure there's many things here I don't understand. That was a bit arrogant. But also, I have done this a few times, and I have used basically every class, though not necessarily in anywhere near every combination. But I do think this is a pretty well done draft. I think probably the most suspicious pick was Ninja at 4. Ninja is a great class playing regularly and has so many tools. Dual wield is great. Both of its reaction abilities are excellent. Sunken State is phenomenal. Abandon is phenomenal. These are both great. I always expect like I'm gonna make such a good Abandon build, and then I like never leave Sunken State because Sunken State is just fantastic. And I'm like, okay, when I get the mantles, I'll switch off Sunken State. And by the time I've gotten the good mantles, I'm like, no, Sunken State is so good, I can't leave this behind. So Ninja has some really good tools, some really powerful stuff, um, and it's hard to quite explain without it being seen why it's not quite as good as some of the other power classes. But I think it is not quite as good. All right, let's build the teams, and then we'll stop. Though once we pick which one I play, I will feel free to change them up. So let's start with team 1. All right, Holy Knight plus Geo is clearly a pair. Lancer plus Archer, so we'll call that Larcher. That's terrible sounding. But if we combine them the other way, yeah, let's go Larcher here. Holy Mancer, I guess. And Ramza is Charizard. Ramza's Charizard. All right, cool. In Team B, Ramza's probably the Samurai Time Mage. Samurai, he can't be the Dancer. So we'll have a Dancing Knight. Nancer? We'll say Dancing Knight. And the other choice is the Priest Oracle. No, I don't think that's him. So Oracle. And Ramza will be the high power unit, our Time Samurai. Alright, Team C is going to be the toughest to figure out exactly how I want to do it. So it's definitely Summoning Mediation. And then how do we want to break down the other 4? Uber Squire Thief is not actually very good for... It's actually I might have gone wrong with this draft. This might be the toughest draft. Here's my problem. Uber Squire has to be our Ramza. Otherwise, it's a huge waste. Squire is a terrible class. Uber Squire is an excellent class. Which means Ramza cannot be our Monk Ninja. But Uber Squire Thief does not have good tools to take out Wheatgraph. And you don't want to get stuck on that fight. Do we have to go Uber Squire Monk? Uber Squire Ninja is not that clean either. That's an uncomfortable fight. Like, Ninja is powerful, but this is asking for a whole bunch of resets. Yeah, I think we need healing on Ramza, so I think he has to be Uber Squire Monk. And that means the last class has to be Ninja Thief. Which is fine, but I didn't quite get this team to click. I didn't think it through well enough while we were doing it. I screwed up the Team C draft. Should still be decent, but I think if we look at these teams, I think A and B are the better teams. Because I'm such a believer in Samurai and Dancers, I think probably it goes B, A, C. But B and A are closer to C. So I bet if I ran all three of these, I would get the best, which is lowest score with Team B, followed by A, followed by C. Um, and please let me know which and if you'd like to see me do any of these runs. Not if. We'd all like to see me do these runs. I know you wouldn't. But because no one watched Banner Saga. But that's okay. I do not mind this. What I want to do is I want to enjoy FFT, and I want to enjoy it the way I like to play it, which is through this. And so please let me know if you think any of these teams look more interesting. Also, if you're like, no, Team C is great, play it. That's great. If you're like, nah, Team B sucks. I don't believe in you about dancers. Dancers suck. You know, if you want to see how great dancers are, all right, let's try to sell each team. Team A, you will get to see the might, the incredible might of wizards, the just unstoppability for much of the game of wizards. You will get to see Lancer kind of with its best pair. Archer is just a really good class to carry Lancer stuff. So it will be doing Lancer things, but Archer will give the Lancer higher speed, higher attack. Just a really strong Lancer. You'll see, actually, in fact, you'll basically see everything at its best. Wizard's best pair is Chemist, just besides Samurai, just because Chemist is fantastic. Holy Knight loves to be paired with Geomancer. Lancer doesn't care so much about its pairs, but it loves to be paired with Archer if it's going to be paired. This is just a team where kind of the team came together, everything clicks. This is a good team. It does what it needs to do. It's going to be a good team. Team B, you get to see the incredible dominance of a teleporting samurai. In fact, that's what we should call it. Just unbelievable unit. Priest and Oracle is just solid. Like, it does what it needs to do. It's a useful member of the team. And if you haven't enjoyed the glory of dancers, you will get to see dancing, and it is fun. It's going to do incredible work. Team C. We get the Uber Monk, so we get a Brave Manipulated Monk, which is going to have maxed out Brave, so that Monk is going to be doing work. It also means at some point, I guess it switches over to being an Excalibur user, which is a little weird, but okay. You get High Move Ninja. Ninjas already have pretty high move. High Move Ninja also gets a boost for throw. I tend not to use throw a lot, but throw's range, I believe, is whatever your movement range is. So upping move helps your throw be better, and maybe we'll find neat ways to use that with like duping some nice items. I'm happy to do cheats. And then we get our Summoner Mediator. Summoner, really powerful early, will sweep the early game. We get Brave Manipulation, even more, though we didn't need more. Maybe we get Faith Manipulation? Yeah, Faith Manipulation could be really nice on this team. By lowering Rams's Faith, we could make it so he's basically untouched by magic. And by lowering... Summoner also gives us a backup healer. That might be a reason not to lower Faith. But we could have a team with really low Faith that where our physical units are pretty untouchable by magic attacks. So this team could do some interesting things. I think it's clearly the worst of the three teams. As I said, I would go BAC here, but I think A should be very happy about their draft. B's is less clean in some ways, but I think the upside of Samurai and Dancer is too high. I think B is better. I could be wrong. Chemist is so good. Maybe A is the best. A and B are both great. And C, it did not come together as well, but should still be a solid team. It's far from the worst draft I've seen done. So, okay, we'll call it here. It's been going on way too long. And hopefully this was kind of interesting if you like FFT's gameplay. And please do let me know which one you'd like to see. If you watch the whole thing or not, I don't mind. Which of these three teams do you want to see in action?